Here's an idea. Sad music isn't inherently sad. So here you are, you're listening to Elliott Smith or Ryan Adams, and you are just bawling your eyes out. Or you're listening to Scorpion or Queen, and you are throwing your arms triumphantly in the air because, yeah, life, rock and roll. Music is incredibly effective. Aldous Huxley said that after silence, that which comes closest to expressing the inexpressible is music. We use music to make emotion manifest, to convey, communicate, and reinforce. Music supplements, complements, and conjures emotion in real life, movies, video games, performance, advertisements. But what if I were to tell you that all of those emotions, elation, triumph, anxiety, misery, hopefulness, doom and gloom, music doesn't contain any of those emotions. The lyrics might, but the music doesn't. Major chords aren't happy. Minor chords aren't sad. You have just been trained to hear them that way. Now, there are as many theories about how music and emotion relate to one another as there are Johnny Cash studio records, so we're only going to talk about a couple, but if you want to know more, we'll put a small reading list in the description. Imitation theory, which goes back to Plato, says that music imitates the movement or characteristics of an emotion's physical expression or general feeling. Wide open intervals sound expansive and accepting. Upward harmonic motion sounds uplifting. Jaunty rhythms are jaunty. But stop the jaunt for just a second, because if this were true, wouldn't everything that exhibits these characteristics affect us in the same way that music does? Does a dog walking quickly make you feel anxious? Does a slinky slinking down the stairs make you feel morose? Of course not. So there must be something else about music or the ways we listen to and make it. There's a related claim that says there's something biological or neurological about humans that makes us find certain sounds soothing and certain tonalities evocative. Beautiful. In other words, it's not the music which imitates, it's us that responds. Some studies have shown this to be true, that very young children from many different cultures respond positively to the same intervals and rhythms. But what does this mean for people who make or listen to Georgian folk music, or Bulgarian folk music, or noise rock for that matter? Are we saying that the biology or neurology of people who find these things pleasing and meaningful is somehow different from people who find Katy Perry or Scriabin pleasing and meaningful? That sounds wrong, and maybe even a little unethical. What's more, though, is that amongst any group, like Katy Cats or Bulgarians, there might not even be a consistent consensus about what emotions the music contains. For example, there's a community in Transylvania, and no, they are not vampires, where the same music is played at both weddings and funerals. The emotional content of the music changes based upon its social context. Another study shows that Western classical music doesn't induce the same emotions across every listener. Sources for these things in the description below. Furthermore, while people might be able to recognize emotion in music, even music from other cultures, it doesn't mean that they actually feel that emotion. Or even if it does affect them, it might not affect them in the same way or to the same degree with every listen. This challenges the idea that we are hardwired to respond to music in some way. In order for music to communicate something, we have to assume that it is attempting to, and we have to be receptive to that communication. You can't have your emotional away message set to unavailable. And though that might seem really obvious or even natural, it's really a deeply ingrained part of your cultural training. This is why break squeals and explosions don't affect us, because we don't think of them as containing meaning, even though on some level they might closely resemble rather musical sounds. We are not emotionally receptive to them. The list of things which can cause us to be receptive, it's bigger than Elvis's vocal range, which, incidentally, was quite big.
Huge!
Luckily, two researchers, Patrick Joslin and Daniel, whose last name I'm about to butcher, Vyasfjall, boiled all of those things down into 6 categories which can contribute to, quote, emotional induction by music. They say that brainstem reflexes, evaluative conditioning, emotional contagion, visual imagery, episodic memory, and musical expectancy all contribute to the ways that we feel stuff while hearing things. In other words, sad music isn't simply sad. There are a whole bunch of factors which can determine how we respond to a piece of music. For example, that one Bruno Mars song might make you upset because it reminds you of your ex-girlfriend and that time you guys went to the movies together. But your mom's evaluative conditioning and musical training makes her think that it is boring, predictable dross. But there are still a lot of unanswered questions like, are musically induced emotions different from other emotions? Is music even capable of expressing emotions beyond the most simplistic ones? And before we even even get to those 6 factors of emotional induction, how important is our preternatural sense of tone and rhythm? Joe Hansen over at It's Okay to Be Smart talks more about the connections between emotion and music and about some cool research being done in a remote Cambodian village. So go check that out and then let us know what you think. Where does musical emotion come from? Music? Our biology? Our culture? Let us know in the comments, and if you don't subscribe, I will play the saddest music in the world. I'm absolutely prepared to accept that some laws might be weapons. Let's see what you guys had to say about denial of service attacks as weapons. So first and foremost, the conversation inspired by Maroxarok's observation that this channel is a lot of arguing semantics was awesome. So you should definitely go back and read all of it. We'll put some of it right here, right now. Delta Daedalus points out that MT Gox is mining Team Gox and not Mount Gox. Thank you for correcting me. Children of Gielinor points out a really great connection between denial of service attacks and virtual economies with online games, which is, yeah, this is really interesting. To Doggy Spew and everyone else comparing denial of service attacks to vandalism, I can see this connection, but I think we need to be open to the fact that vandalism can be a violent act that is perpetrated by a weapon. Archlin512 says that a DOS attack should be considered a weapon because it can take down key pieces of infrastructure and draws a connection to wartime tactics, which is, yeah. To Kestrel Town and everyone comparing a DOS attack to a protest. This is another one where I can see the connection, but you have to remember that a protest is subject to the laws and regulations of the real world, and that if you actually transgress some kind of restriction or law, then you will be held accountable, where that line is not so clear online, and especially with denial of service attacks. To the Mr. Tatum, that is impossible. Rumrock H points out that extending Anne Bogart's definition of violence beyond art can be really problematic, and yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes I wish that these episodes could be 45 minutes long, but yeah, it would be the hard thing to do. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these perspicacious individuals, and the tweet of the week comes from Delirium Zero, who points us towards the Wikipedia list of lost films, which is very interesting, turns out.